Greet everybody for coming. It's a pleasure having the opportunity to address people, essentially, and others who are in Africa in the Harvard. Of course, it does not require my saying that Harvard is a famous institution, internationally known for excellence in governance, business, and general application of knowledge to human advancement. So while one is recognizing Harvard for his intellectualism, one must recognize the warmth of all of you who are here to listen to. Nigeria. Nigeria is about the most promising nation in Africa. One, because of its population and its size. Nigeria came into being as a leading African nation that will lead the continent to greatness. Of course, Nigeria has checkered history from colonial rule to an attempt at civilian administration. It was aborted in 1966, and interregnum lasted till late 70s. It failed early 80, and then we have a mismatch of military civilian until now. The longest period of civilian rule outside the colonial era is what we are witnessing now. From 1999 to date, I've been involved in one way or the other in the development of a serious government approach to raise, inspiring the people for development. This we did in Lagos under the leadership of Aregbesola. And from there, it became clear that our attempt in Lagos will not endure if the hinterland of the nation, particularly of the western part of Nigeria, is neglected. So the need to ease the pressure from Lagos led us into going back home. Yes, I'm not a Lagosian strictly by definition. I'm a Lagosian by association. I'm not I am from Ilesha in Osun. Osun, of course, the states, even part of Lagos, that that we now have in the western part of Nigeria, were originally a unitary space called the Western Region. After the military rule, or during the military rule, Western Region became Western States, and the states were gradually balkanized. So the region was actually gradually balkanized into states, with first Oyo, Ogun, and Ondo. Then Oyo was split into two to have Osun. Osun is in the heartland of Yoruba region, and Yoruba has believed that that is their origin. It's the most urbanized state in Nigeria. You have the highest number of ancient towns with between 500 and 1,000 years of history in Osun. There is that advantage of a state with a highly cultured people who had a long history of urbanization. As rich as that history is, then there's a challenge of municipal services. A state that is small, with limited resources. Again, I must also tell you that the many years of military rule and quasi-military rule led the state into absolute dependence on allocation from federal government. We are still battling to overcome that. The period is so short, but that's our target. We want to take the state out of its dependence on allocation from federal government. Because we believe that any territory that cannot on its own sustain itself is a possession, cannot be called an independent territory. So, but with that as it may, we are still heavily dependent on federal government. We plan on allocation from federal government, just as we are working on growing our own economy to sustain ourselves. So from the little or limited allocation we get, we felt we must redefine development. Development hitherto was focused on just physical infrastructure. As important as physical infrastructure, the human element is to me more important. How? You find out that the women in the villages claim ownership of roads by drying their commodities on the road. And that is the only way they could use the road. There was no means for them to use the road otherwise. They had no vehicle. Children had no vehicle. So the only way they could own the road is to once in a while, of course, very few people ply the road in the remote area. That's when and where they're there. So they spread their flour, they spread their commodities to dry on the road. So we look at this and we felt, as important as roads are, they are not as important as the human beings. So our own policy focused the people. And the first intervention at that was to put in the mind of the people symbols, images that will inspire them to, one, understand themselves, appreciate themselves, and have confidence in their ability to help themselves. So we branded the state. We went to the repertoire of our history as a people, found out that we had a culture of high belief in ourselves as virtuous, decent, and men and women of integrity. So we branded the state of the virtuous. That's the closest English interpretation of the Yoruba word, Omoluabi. So we call the state Ipele Omoluabi. These tremendous data people to rediscover themselves. We didn't stop at that. We revived the old symbols of the state. The state had an emblem, which we revived. And we developed, we created a flag for the people. This happened within the first 60 days in office. As we are doing that, we looked at the huge unemployment of youth, particularly in Nigeria, but it was in my state because of our long interaction with the West and the fact that we had a highly people-oriented government in the first phase of development in the region under the leadership of Governor Olowo. Education had been the most important activity of government in that region. So we have a large number of people with college diplomas, but without work. To stem the crisis that restive youth without any engagement cause, we set about an ambitious youth employment program in which we engaged 20,000 of them at a time, trained them, gave them some leadership, training, and discipline for them to realize that life is about service, community, out of which you get some benefit to live. So this youth, after a 3-week orientation in leadership and discipline, was set on community work, social services, and public works. And the first set exited into self-employment and some permanent public employment some 3 weeks back. The second phase is being trained in our makeshift training facility to provide leadership training for them. So that will be the first time in the history of government in Nigeria physically intervening in youth employment, youth orientation, and youth participation in community, social and public work. We inherited a bad finance. The state was insolvent and actually indebted to banks to the tune of 18.3 billion when we assumed office. We could not pay salaries of workers without again borrowing a bridge fund of about 10 billion to pay salaries. This we had to refinance to relieve ourselves of the burden of a short-term loan that was difficult to manage. It's been on that way. Our intervention in social aspect of life is not limited to youth. We realize that we have a large number of aged people, some supported by their children, some not supported. To be sure that we will not just throw money at those who would not need such support.